Welcome to the Hockey Writers Prospect Corner, a show with our top prospects writing crew, bringing you the latest news, analysis, scouting reports, mocks, rankings, and much more. From the World Juniors to the NHL Draft floor, from the farm to the NHL, our team covers everything that happens in the world of prospects. So sit back, grab a notebook, and get ready for Prospect Corner.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Prospect Corner presented by the Hockey Writers. And today's episode, we're going to be doing a round of draft debates where we're going to pit two prospects against each other, two prospects from the 2023 draft, and see who comes out on top, as well as taking a really quick look ahead at the Memorial Cup in the CHL, which starts a little later this week. I'm your host, Logan Horn, and today I am joined by my co-hosts and fellow prospect analysts, Matthew Zator and Peter Baracchini. Peter, how are you doing today?
Doing great. And in much of all the prospect playoffs, NHL playoffs, I managed to also start playing the most anticipated game of the year, Tears of the Kingdom. So I've been doing some writing, doing some prospects, some watching, but in that extra free time, I am nerding out and playing Legend of Zelda. So got my little breaks in between just in case.
Yeah, absolutely. You've got your free time scheduled for the next few months. Basically, you've got
rest of the year. Yeah,
you've got that all answered, no questions. I'm actually in the same boat as you there.
There you go.
Been a lot of that lately. Matt, how are you doing? How are you doing this fine day?
I'm doing good. The draft keeps getting closer by the day, and fun. And I love doing these debates and stuff going between two different players. So it's gonna have some fun. And playoffs, junior playoffs are almost wrapping up. We got the Memorial Cup soon too, so that's going to be fun.
Yeah, absolutely. It's starting real soon. Friday, May 26th, depending on when this episode is out. I'll also just very briefly mention the USHL Clark Cup final. Just completed this last week. It was the Youngstown Phantoms versus the Fargo Force. The Phantoms, I believe, took out the Chicago Steel in the conference final, which was like not expected. And then they won the championship as well. So Martin Miziak and William Whitelaw, who are both 2023 draft eligibles. And I know, Matt, you're a big Whitelaw fan. They both are winners of the Clark Cup, USHL champions there in Youngstown. So that's worth a mention because we're going to talk about Canadian Junior, but we'll throw that in as well. All right. So as I mentioned, we're going to do some draft debates. So I've pulled kind of a grouping of prospects that are roughly similar, either in play style, in expected draft position, size, something like that. And we're gonna give it a look, see who we think is going to come out on top, maybe on draft day, maybe 10 years down the road, and if we're all selecting, there's no way we get a tie. So that's perfect. There's three of us. We can't tie on anything. We have to make a choice. So first up here, I think it might be a bit of a competition between you two here. We've got Colby Barlow versus Matt Wood. So Matt, I'll come to you first here. And I think I know where you're going, but what are your thoughts between Colby Barlow and Matt Wood? They're kind of expected to be in that, later half of that second big tier on draft day, like maybe 9th to 15th or so, like in that rough area, both of them. And there's a lot of preference baked into these picks that are going to happen here. But who do you have?
I've warmed up to Colby Barlow, I want to say. He's impressed me a lot more since I've said that I didn't think he was supposed to be where he was ranked and all that stuff. But I'm still going Matthew Wood. He's still my guy. I think he's got a ton of potential in the NHL down the road because, he just keeps showing it. He did, what he did at the World Junior, under 18s. I keep calling it the World Juniors, the under 18 World Championship. And he led Team Canada not in goal scoring, but in scoring there. And he was one of their leaders. And the one thing, and we all know we did in the NCAA this past season, when the youngest player to do what he did and being so productive at that level is just impressive to me at his age. Being able to dominate, well, not dominate, but be really solid in a league like that, playing with players and against and with players that are a lot older than him. So I've been really impressed with them. I'm still going Matthew Wood. I think, Barlow and Wood may end up being similar type players in the NHL, but I think Wood's going to have a bit more of a productive, maybe a little later on, because Barlow, I think, is a lot more developed at this point. But I think in the end, Wood's going to have the more productive career.
Yeah, that's fair. It's where I expected you to land on that. I think something you brought up too is worth mentioning, that Matt Wood had a really great U18s tournament. He looked really good there. Probably did himself some favors. There's lots of NHL scouts and GMs watching that. And Colby Barlow kind of had the opposite. Really great season, but then kind of stumbled a bit at the U18s, which could hurt his draft stock because, if it's the last big, it's the last memory teams have of you, at least as you're playing, because we've got the draft combine coming up and they'll get to talk to him. But if it's the last time they saw you play and it wasn't very great, wasn't really up to your usual standards, then that could do some damage. But Peter, I'll come to you next. What are your thoughts on Barlow versus Wood? Who would you pick?
Yeah, it's interesting you brought up that comparison, because Wood was definitely the better of the two at the U18s, and they were I thought they were very, very, very evenly matched at the Hlinka Gretzky. Maybe Barlow had a slight edge heading into the season over Wood. Both had 5 points, 2 goals, 3 assists, but I'm still going to give that like Matthew Wood has narrowed the gap for me a little bit in terms of where they should be, but I am still going to pick Colby Barlow in the sense that he has more of a refined 200-foot game. This is a guy that could possibly play on the penalty kill, making him more valuable because he has that powerful shot, just like Wood, to be a lethal factor at 5-on-5 power play, but also the presence of mindset to be responsible in his own end and in all 3 zones. So it is definitely a little bit close. And I still liked Barlow at that tournament, even though Wood stood out a little bit more playing alongside, I believe he was on that line with Celebrini too. So I think they developed really great chemistry there. But yeah, I still like Barlow's intensity, his ability to establish the forecheck and attack, the ability to pressure players and create turnovers and quickly transition the other way. I think he may have just a little bit, also a slight more edge in foot speed and agility, but it is very close. So similar to like what Matt is for Barlow, it's the same thing for me with Wood. He narrowed the gap, but I'm still leaning towards Colby Barlow because of that well-rounded aspect.
Oh boy, I didn't think this through. I knew you guys would go those directions probably, but I didn't realize that I'd have to pick between them and be the tiebreaker.
We made compelling arguments.
You both did. It's kind of tough because it feels like, watching Barlow, I agree with you, Peter. Barlow has a little more of a pro style game at this age currently, just like the 200-foot play. He kills penalties in the OHL quite well, and scores lots of goals. But then also Matt Wood, as Matt said, scored basically a point per game as the youngest player in college hockey. And he wasn't on one of these, he wasn't on Boston College, wasn't on Harvard. He wasn't on these top teams. He was on UConn, not the biggest program, at least in NCAA hockey. So that's pretty impressive. At this point, I feel like Barlow is the safer pick.
Yeah.
But Wood has a little more upside, definitely more potential to bust as well. But a few months back, we had a conversation on this show about upside versus certainty. Mm-hmm. And at this point in the draft, I'm going to go with Matthew Wood around the 10 spot, just because the offensive potential is crazy. And if he can catch up to Barlow speed-wise, I guess literally catch up to him, then he could, I think he could be a legit top 6, maybe winger, which is kind of where Barlow lands too. It's very close, but I'm going to go with Wood because I think there's a little more upside there. But I wouldn't be surprised with Barlow because he's pretty safe pick, but not in a really bad way. I feel like he's a really safe bet to be a good middle 6 winger, and a good bet to be more than that. Those are both going to be great players probably. So All right, that's round one. I don't like having to be the winner or the tiebreaker, so I'm going to go first on the next one. We've got the next one. We've got the consensus top two defensemen, David Reinbacher and Axel Sandin Pellikka. Axel Sandin Pellikka did himself a ton of favors at the U18s, where he was borderline dominant for Sweden. Against his proper age group this time. Offensively, defensively, he looked pretty solid. And it was enough that Craig Button with TSN in his latest rankings put Sandin Pellikka at 5th overall. I believe he was above, who got bumped to 6th? I actually can't remember. I think I have it here. 1 second. Because I couldn't believe it. Have it saved. Yeah, Will Smith. He had Will Smith drop to 6th. With Sandin Pellikka going above him. I'm not saying yet that I agree with it. It's just more people are bumping him up more and more. So we could potentially fight for the first defenseman off the board. But I'm going to go with David Reinbacher. It just feels like a much safer pick. We've seen in recent drafts the last few years, like I look back at the 2018 draft specifically, and there were lots of undersized, skilled offensive defensemen that went in the first round, early in the second. And maybe one of them, I think there's only one that has really been like a great NHL player, and that's Quinn Hughes. And he has an exceptional skating ability, one of the very best skaters in the NHL. So agile and smooth, it's ridiculous. But then from that same draft, you have a handful of large defensemen who maybe don't have the same smarts, but who skate well. And so I think we're seeing a little bit of a shift in that a big defenseman who can skate well is very valuable. And it doesn't hurt that David Reinbacher is a right-hand shot, which is super valuable in the NHL right now. But he skates really well. He defends well against professional players, and he hasn't looked out of place at the men's world championships against the best pro players in the world. Well, a lot of the best pro players in the world. Missed a few games with injury after Rasmus Sandin launched him out of the rink basically with a massive check. But he's back. He's playing limited minutes, but he's still looking pretty solid. So I think he's a very safe defenseman to take. He's going to go in the top 10 almost certainly, because a defenseman always does. Probably wouldn't take him there just based on his upside, but he's going to be a really good second pairing right shot D. Could be more, could be a little less, but he's going to play in the NHL. Probably could next year. Probably take a year in the middle. But Reinbacher is my top pick for sure for a defenseman. Matt, I'll come to you next here. Axel Sandin Pellikka or David Reinbacher? Who do you got?
This is it's become tougher to pick between these two guys because of what Sandin Pellikka did at the under 18s, because like you said, he was dominant and he was probably the best defenseman at that tournament. So you're looking at, and then Reinbacher, well, he's doing well at the World Championships. So they're really not a bad pick either way. But I'm going to go with Reinbacher as well, because the same reasons, like you said, he's bigger. He's more of that two-way, more refined defenseman that you need. And with Sandin Pellikka, obviously teams want him too, because he's the definition of what a modern day defenseman is, like a Quinn Hughes, Cale Makar, Adam Fox, those types of Fox is bigger. Is he bigger? It's like you need those two, but I think Reinbacher's more of a rare type defenseman that you need to pick if you can, because of that, like I said, the size, the skating, the two-way. He's probably going to enter the NHL a lot sooner as well because of that. So you're going to have him in the lineup, sooner than maybe Sandin Pellikka will be. So I'll go with Reinbacher. So I'll make it a 2, and we'll see if Peter will make it a 3. But it'll be Reinbacher for me.
Yeah, for sure. I also realized that I immediately went against what I said on the first one, and I picked Reinbacher because he's safer
safe bet
than Sandin Pellikka. But the thing is, looking at Sandin Pellikka, if you're taking him top 12, 13 picks, maybe, you need to be confident that he's Quinn Hughes and that he's not Adam Boqvist, because he could be either. If you think the brain is there and the skating is going to be good enough that he can make up for the size, he can defend well enough, and he's going to be an electric offensive player in the NHL, not in Sweden, in juniors in Sweden, then great. Take it, go for it. But there's always a chance that he's not really that. And I can't really argue. It's so funny. I immediately went against my own apology. But anyway, I'm anyway. Peter, we'll come to you here third. Your vote doesn't matter, so you can vote for whoever you want.
I mean, it really doesn't matter, but I'm going to make it a 3-peat and vote Reinbacher anyways, because like you both said, that refined two-way game, the fact that he's already playing, we're getting meaningful minutes at the top level in Switzerland. It's not to say that Sandin Pellikka hasn't gotten to the SHL level. Like, he's dominated every single group that he's been in, especially at the J20 level. Maybe not getting the minutes that he would like because he's still very young in the SHL, but 5 points in 22 games whenever he does get in and whenever he is on the ice, he's making the best of his moment or the opportunity that he's given. And I just want to see a little bit more, but he is getting that pro experience right now, and that's a good first step. I do think that his defensive game is a little bit better, and it got progressively better, as I saw, especially in that tournament throughout the year itself. He's very aggressive when, trying to like get in on one-on-one coverage and try and battle for that puck. So maybe has to have a little bit of that tendency because it can get him out of position, but I think he handles himself very well and he doesn't panic no matter what situation he's in. So definitely going to be interesting, but I'm still going to take Reinbacher because of the production. Again, production really isn't everything, but if you're getting, 22 points in about 40 odd games at that level, 46, and most of them are assists, you're breaking out the puck very well. Your passing is crisp. You're finding your teammates very, very well. It's hard not to overlook that. And even in my mock draft, I had him in my top 10 going to the Blues. And it just seems like a perfect fit no matter where he is, but he does seem like a top 10 player.
Yeah, Reinbacher is the easy call at this point. I should say, though, he does have upside. It's not like he's only going to play in your bottom four or something. I don't think he's got. Some people are talking about Mo Seider with Reinbacher, and I mean that's the dream.
Mm-hmm.
It was also the dream when Seider was selected, was for him to turn into a legit number one guy with real offense. That could happen for Reinbacher. He's at a roughly similar spot physically and defensively, and he's shown, like you said, Peter, he's shown some good offense playing against pros. Like, he's not in a bad league. He's in the top Swiss pro league, one of the better leagues in the world. So I would love to get a look at Reinbacher maybe in the AHL next year. Wouldn't be surprised to see him have like a David Jiricek, Simon Nemetz type impact in the AHL next year. All right. So 3-0 there for Reinbacher against ASP. Next up, so these are two of the top center prospects. Well, in kind of the next tier of centermen, because you have the centers that are all at the top of the draft. And then there's a few defensemen and a few wingers, kind of in the top 10 area. But then these guys are two of the next centers coming up, and centers are valued very highly in the draft. So there's a good chance that one of these guys is in the top 11, 12 picks, even though maybe they don't quite deserve that spot, but I believe at least one of them does. So we've got Nate Danielson and Brayden Yager. Peter, I'll come to you first on this one here. What are your thoughts on Danielson versus Yager?
Ooh, this is even tougher than the previous two. I mean, I would say it's tougher than Barlow and Wood because Reinbacher and Sandin Pellikka, we just swept the floor with that. But
it's an easy one.
Yeah, I mean, it just seems like Danielson has gotten progressively better throughout the whole entire season, and what he was able to accomplish on Brandon Wheatking's team that was near the bottom of the standings, for him to be that go-to player and take charge every single time, that's just hard to overlook. And Yeah, Yager probably could have had a little bit more this season. I did notice a little bit more of a playmaking style to his game because we know how great of a shot that he has. But the work ethic is there for both of those players. I think teams are going to zero in on both of them in that mid portion of the first, maybe in that 13 to 16 range, because they have that potential. They have the offense. They have both sides that make them great with the shooting and the playmaking, and the work ethic is there. But I think maybe because he's just gone above and beyond and has probably overseeded him as a better prospect in the rankings, and giving a slight edge to Nate Danielson at the moment because of what he was able to do all season. That's just absolutely very impressive.
Nice. I like those points. I almost said I agree, but I don't want to say anything right now.
Not yet.
Matt, I'll come to you. It's 1-0 Danielson. What are your thoughts on Danielson versus Yager?
Danielson, I picked him for the Canucks in the last mock draft. And so if you want more about what I said about him, I go back there. But I think Danielson, I agree. I think I'll pick Danielson for this one as well. I think has a bit more, again, that upside of being I think I'm more of a chance he's going to be an NHL player just because of how well-rounded he is as that type of matchup center that you can put up against the top players on your team, against the other team. And, he's one of those guys that I think could step into the NHL sooner than a lot of the other centermen because of that. And this is why he's compared to Bo Horvat. Horvat was able to step into the fourth line role a lot sooner in his career because of that defensive game that he had, and winning faceoffs and all that too. So, I mean, I think Danielson has that same trajectory. But Yager, ultimately, I think Yager has a bit more upside in offensively. But I'm going to go with Danielson just because I think he has more of a certainty as being an NHL player.
Yeah, that's pretty much what it comes down to, I think, is that Yager has the offensive potential, but didn't really produce a ton this year compared to expectations. And Danielson produced at a pretty similar level, but everyone's trying to knock him down a peg because he didn't score a ton.
Mm-hmm.
But, Yager didn't really either. I don't know. I think with Danielson, you're looking at a guy that you hope turns into maybe a Horvat, like you said, Matt, maybe Dylan Cousins, based on the size and speed. I think that's the dream with how Cousins has looked the last 18 months or so in Buffalo. He's got that two-way game. He's got everything you want in a centerman. Maybe ideally a second line centerman though, because he hasn't shown yet the offense to really lead a lineup. And Yager, this shot is obviously insane. Like you mentioned, Peter, it's one of the best shots in the draft this year, but I'm not even sold that he's a center in the NHL. He's a little undersized, not that much, but NHL teams care about that a lot.
Mm-hmm.
I know he drives play down the middle a good bit, but I don't know. I'm not sold on it at this point. Danielson would be my pick as well. To be honest, at this point, I don't hate him in the top 10. Like Washington might be reaching a bit to take him with some of the guys that'd be on the board then. Detroit, St. Louis, Vancouver, those teams, I could see them making that pick in the 8 to 12 range maybe. I like Danielson a lot. All right, next, we're going to have two of the super skilled, really smart, not the best skating wingers here, who are going to be a bit of a wild card, both of them on draft day. So we've got Gabe Perreault versus Andrew Cristall. I don't know where I'm going to end up on this one, to be completely honest. Matt, I'll come to you first. What are your thoughts?
Oh, this is a tough one because I love both players. I'd probably have, if they were both on the board, where I'd be picking as a team, I'd have a hard time because they're both guys that have massive upside. But like you said, their skating could hold them back to hit that upside. So, Perreault did his under 18s was insane, as we all know. And, he had a pretty good, a really good US NDP season as well. So, my gosh, I'm just dancing around it. I don't know who I'm going to pick here. I think I'm going to go with Perreault. I think he has, again, that upside, a lot more upside as being that. I think he'll end up being more of that power play specialist, just because of his skating that may hold him back in that 5-on-5 play. But he's going to just feast on the power play. I mean, his playmaking is so good, and he's very creative. He's one of those guys that, like, I think I've said this in past with him, is that he'll make a centerman that needs a playmaker on this line a goal scorer, because his playmaking is so good from that wing position. So I'm going to go Perreault, but very, very thin line between. So, but Perreault's my pick.
Yeah, that's totally fair. Peter, what are your thoughts? Gabe Perreault or Andrew Cristall? Where are you landing these days?
This was tough because of the fact that, Perreault did have a fantastic season this year. Don't get me wrong, but there has been like some questions about how much involved was he with the play compared to Ryan Leonard and Will Smith? Was he kind of a flyer? But then again, 132 points, you would expect him to be involved quite a bit. That's why they're saying production really isn't quite everything. Maybe it's how he gets those points. I don't know, but still a fantastic season nonetheless. Which is why, you got to be cautious about putting him way too high, because of the fact that, there's that. Yeah, he's great along board plays. He doesn't let the size advantage get the best of him, but he can use it or utilize to add some more strength. And I think Cristall has a little bit more strength in that regard, where he was able to dominate and be the leading scorer on the Kelowna Rockets. So very, very close. I mean, I've been a big fan of Cristall this whole entire time. I may just give him the slight edge, but it's like the narrowest of margins. And if you had to, again, kind of like Matt, it's really, I do not envy any team to pick between the two, because they're very, very similar and identical in terms of play styles. So, yeah, I don't know, maybe get back to me in 10 years and then we can have this discussion again. But
all right, I'll write that.
This was really tough. I don't know if I can put down a tie, but if I just got to pick one to just create some controversy and drama, not really controversy, but some drama to make things interesting, I'll pick Andrew Cristall.
All right. Well, I don't know if I'm out to lunch here or something, but this one is actually pretty easy for me at this point in time. I'm going Gabe Perreault. I feel like I don't think it's fair to say the gap increased significantly at the U18s, because you look at Perreault's line mates at that tournament versus Cristall's. I mean, Cristall had good teammates, but Perreault had better teammates, no doubt, with Leonard and Smith.
And Cristall didn't start getting going until later in the tournament himself. So
sure. Yeah. And production isn't a huge differentiator. You look at Perreault's points and you're like, that is insane.
Mm-hmm.
But then if Cristall didn't miss 10 games, he's probably 110 points in the WHL, second in scoring, almost certainly behind only Bedard. Cristall has a better shot. He has less help around him. He's a really big upside play in this draft. And even though there's a chance he slides to late first, maybe even the second, that if you can get him past 20, that's a pretty valuable pick in my eyes. And could turn out really well for you. It could turn out to be nothing. Both these players, I'll need to see them succeeding in the NHL before I'll believe anything, because they're both going to score like crazy for the next 2-3 years, and then we'll see what happens when they get to the NHL. But Perreault is my pick just because getting a chance to watch him play more at the end of this season, he is one of the smartest players in this draft class, and I know he doesn't drive play quite like Ryan Leonard can. He doesn't have the skating. He doesn't have the elusiveness of Will Smith, but he makes plays happen like very few players at this age. The skating isn't amazing, but it's serviceable. He's good in straight lines. I think he can improve on that just with putting on a little more weight, because he's pretty skinny right now. But also, you look at his dad, Yannick Perreault, when he played in the NHL, and his older brother, Jacob Perreault, is a Ducks prospect. They're all similar heights, but his dad and his brother got thick quick. around the same age that Gabe is right now. So I am not concerned about his frame really. I think he'll grow into it quite a bit. Doesn't hurt that he'll be playing with Ryan Leonard, who's one of the most like athletic teenagers I've ever seen in the NHL draft. But Perreault's my pick for sure. I like him in the top 14, 15, 16 picks maybe. But if you're really, really high on the upside there, you could go even higher. Let's see how much time we got. Next up, we've got two undersized wingers who fight real hard and are pretty smart. They play quite differently. Just because they're short doesn't mean they're the same, but that's the similarity here, is that they're short. I'm going to go with Gavin Brindley and Jayden Perron next. I'll start this one off. I like both these players quite a lot, but Gavin Brindley's my pick for sure. Perron was excellent with the Chicago Steel this year. To be fair, you had Max Celebrini, who's an incredible young player to play with, but he wasn't just riding his coattails the whole year. He's the better offensive player of these two, I would say. Mm-hmm. But Gavin Brindley is so tenacious, one of the most competitive players in the class. And he has the skill to be I've said this before, but he has the skill to be a top 6 player if everything goes well. But he also has the work ethic and the skills in puck battles along the boards or just in open ice to be a bottom 6 grinder if he needs to be, which is surprising for his size. But I think that versatility is really comforting, that if he doesn't hit the upside, he's still going to be a valuable player to you. So I'm going to go with Brindley. Let's see, Peter, I'll come to you next here. Brindley or Perron? What do you think?
Yeah, I've been a big fan of Perron this whole entire season. I've similar to where I stood on, players like Barlow and all that. I've been a big fan of his throughout the whole entire season. But like you mentioned, Brindley's work ethic and his tenacity just stood out every single time. For him to be just under a point per game in his first season in the NCAA, it's absolutely phenomenal what he's able to do. And I'm curious to see how his sophomore season is going to go, because he was so effective. And now that, you're getting some players moving on, possibly that frees up a roster spot and for him to move up in the lineup to get those opportunities. And again, I think like you said, Perron has more of the offensive upside, being more elusive and more evasive with his mobility, his hands, his puck movement and skills and everything like that. It's phenomenal, but Brindley's making it close. I'm still going to go with Perron, but I become more and more enamored with Brindley's play this whole entire season as it went on.
Nice. We've set Matt up for a choice. Yeah, you're gonna make one of us mad, Matt. Just so you know, and I'm not gonna forgive you if you pick. No, I'm just kidding. What are your thoughts, Matt? Gavin Brindley or Jayden Perron? Who do you have over the other at this point?
I don't know. This one's really easy for me, and it's Gavin Brindley. I really love his game, and he's very similar to Connor Garland. And I love watching Connor Garland play, just because of that. He's never a guy he'll never be standing still on the ice. He's always around. He's always He's always twisting, turning. Not being able to be hit out there, and he's also not afraid to go into the corners and fight for the puck. Despite his size, he is smaller than Brindley. I believe he's like, even though they list him as 5'9", I'm pretty sure he's like 5'7", something like that. He seems to be shorter than what it says on his elite prospects or
the
whatever.
Combine is good for that.
He's 5'10" or something.
The combine's good for that. We'll get good measurements there.
Yeah, right. But yeah, I love Brindley's game just because of how he plays out there. His work ethic's just always there. He's one of the, like you said, the most tenacious players out there, and he's also, his motor is just, I think they're all the same terms. They're saying the same thing, but yeah, he's just amazing. I really hope that again, he'd be much higher. The Canucks shouldn't pick him at 11, but if they could somehow get another first round pick, they should pick him somewhere. But Brindley, yeah, he's just been, I love it as a player, so he's my pick.
Nice. I think The Canucks, I agree, shouldn't take him at 11, but who knows? It seems more their style to instead of trading a player for
trading down for
a pick, they trade back for him maybe.
Yeah.
Which who knows? Dump some cap and get a player you still like. Could be valuable for a team like them that's pretty tight up against the salary cap. Before the season has started. Anyway, before the off season has started. All right, we're gonna actually take a quick break here before doing two more of these. If we got time, we'll do a quick rundown of some of the CHL playoffs going on, and then we'll wrap up. So, we'll take a break for a word from the hockey writers.
Interested in writing for the Hockey Writers? If you have experience writing about hockey, are passionate about the sport, and are looking to take your writing to the next level, the Hockey Writers could be the place for you. Here at THW, you will have the opportunity to hone your craft at one of the world's largest and most respected hockey publishers. You will have control over what you write, be able to seek out media credentials, and be supported by a large network of writers and editors. Plus, you'll get paid for doing it. If you're interested and want to know more about team openings and requirements, please visit the Write for THW page on the Hockey Writers website. A link to that page is also listed in the description.
All right, so next up here, we've got two goalies, and I dropped the guy that most people still consider the top goaltender just because I feel like none of us consider him the top goaltender, so I wanted to make it difficult.
Mhm.
I've got Trey Augustine and Michael Hrabal. I know that you guys have been on the Augustine hype train for a while now. Hrabal had a great tournament at the U18s. I mean, Augustine did too, but who wouldn't behind that team?
Mhm.
Matt, I'll come to you first here. Which goalie do you like more at this point in time?
Oh my gosh, this has gotten tougher because of Hrabal's performance at the U18s. My gosh, I'm still going Augustine though. I think he's still again at the upside. I think he has. I think both these goaltenders have ability to be a starter in the NHL, but Augustine's just been very consistent in his game throughout his time in his draft year, before his draft year. He played at the World Juniors, I believe, this past one as well, and was really good. And then the U18s against his own age group, he was really good too. So I mean, yeah, he was with a good team, but it doesn't matter. I mean, look at Bjarnason with Canada, good team, didn't play very well. So I mean, you still have to have a good goalie, even if you have a really good team, you still have to make the saves. So I'm going Augustine. I just think he has that more ability to be that starter, a more certain, and his consistency over the last couple seasons here.
Yeah, that's fair. I think my methodology with goaltenders is that it's all magic, and we don't understand how to take a good goaltending prospect and make them a good NHL goalie unless it's like one of these top guys like Wallstedt or maybe Askarov. Like there's some guys where it feels pretty certain, but other than those guys, it's just throwing darts at a wall. I'm gonna go with Michael Hrabal just because you see a lot more NHL goalies that look like him nowadays than Trey Augustine. And obviously you look at the size and some of the deficiencies at his age, but also some of the skills. And I think you could dream of Jacob Markstrom. I mean, I'm not saying he's going to get there. He's not going to necessarily be a Vezina finalist in the next decade, but I feel like there's a little bit more of a clear path for him to the NHL. But it's close. I mean, all these goalies are probably going to go in the second round at the latest. So they're all kind of in the similar tier. There's not like a big gap between anyone at this point, in our eyes, at least it seems. Peter, I'll come to you last here. You decide our vote finally between Trey Augustine and Michael Hrabal.
It's funny because this is the easiest one for me, and that's Trey Augustine. I've been like as good as Hrabal has been. There have been moments where he has struggled this year, and even at the U18s, I thought he did have a good U18. Didn't think he tried to, or didn't think he had performances that would clearly, like, even in games where he was probably standing on his head, didn't seem like he would seem to elevate his play kind of thing or improve his stock in that regard. I think Augustine has been consistent in all that throughout the whole entire season. And yeah, the World Juniors, I think the Team USA was very offense heavy, especially on defense, and he was left to hang dry most of the time, but I thought he held himself pretty well in that tournament to help secure the bronze medal for them. And even so, he was just phenomenal this year. We all expected Team USA to win the gold medal, and he was a big reason for that, backstopping them to that. So impressive year. I still have him as my top goaltender at the moment.
All right, that's fair. That's fair. I've got one more here before we move on, and it's the battle of two very tall, very good skating defensemen who are a little more defensive than offensive at this point. One who's slowly fallen all year because nobody gets to watch him play in Russia based on like streaming rights and no international play for Russia. And the other who's been rising all year. So we've got Dmitri Simashev versus Tom Willander. Peter, I'll come to you first on this one. Who do you have here now? These are very different stories in their draft year, but I'm curious what your thoughts are.
Yeah, it's Tom, and it's not just because I love him as a player. It's just I think he has more projectable upside, and his offensive game is starting to develop a little bit more, as we saw at that U18 tournament with his breakout passing, foot speed, transitional play, everything like that. I think he has more of a higher ceiling than Simashev. I think he's just going to be more like he could probably be a top 4 defender, Simashev, but I think he's more of that defensive, stay at home, bruising type of defender than Willander, and I think he projects a little bit higher up as a result of that. So it's going to be Tom for me.
All right, that's totally fair. Matt, I'll come to you next. What are your thoughts? Dmitri Simashev versus Tom Willander.
Yeah, I'm agreeing with Peter. Tom Willander is my pick. He really solidified that for me at the U18s. I really Sandin Pellikka was the best defenseman, but Willander I think was the second behind him. I think he was really good at the U18. So same thing with Peter. I think he has that more projectable. He has more of an offensive game and could be a top 4 defenseman. Not saying Simashev can't, but again, we haven't seen a lot of him as much as Willander to kind of say that. So Simashev, I think, will be an NHL defenseman, but a much different one. I think Willander is going to have more offensive upside. So I'm going with Willander.
Yeah, this one's tough for me. Just to be a contrarian, I'll go with Simashev, even though it's close. I've been really I've been watching back some of those games at the World Championship or the U18 World Juniors, trying to make sure I don't overcorrect Willander from his really great performance there and jump him too high after that. But every time I watch him, I'm like, no, I think this is about right. I just wish we got to see Simashev at the same tournament. He's much bigger, Tom, as I guess we're on a first name basis with at this point. Tom is 6'1", I believe, and Simashev is 6'4". And he's got some minutes, he started the year in the KHL, which is pretty impressive right out of training camp. I think he had 0 points. Let me actually double check. 0 points in 18 games. So it's also very fair to mention that the offense has been shown a lot more by Willander so far. I don't know. I just can't quite get Simashev out of my head. He skates so well. Both of them do, though. And the defense is great. And the offense, I've seen a lot more than the stat sheet shows. And I really think he's got potential. It's pretty close. Both are pretty good bets. I feel like Willander is probably going to go first because there's no Russia factor there, and he's right-handed, which certainly helps. But that's a tight one. So I'll take a very quick run through of some of the CHL playoffs, and then we'll get our prospects of the week and get out of here. So as I mentioned, USHL playoffs are over. QMJHL playoffs tonight as we record. Game 6 will be happening. The Quebec Remparts have a 3-2 lead over the Halifax Mooseheads. OHL Championship is also going to Game 6 tonight as we record. Peterborough Petes versus London Knights, and the Petes have a 3-2 series lead. And then the WHL playoffs are complete with the Seattle Thunderbirds beating the Winnipeg Ice in 5 games, which is crazy. Both teams were stacked. It was just an awesome battle until it wasn't, because the Thunderbirds just destroyed them. They only lost 3 games in their entire playoff run, which is just wild. So out of those groups of teams, we know so far that the Seattle Thunderbirds are going to be playing in the Memorial Cup as the representative from the WHL. The Kamloops Blazers are the host, also from the WHL. They're no slouch, though. They've got Logan Stankoven, Olin Zellweger. Were number 1 and number 2 in playoff scoring in the WHL, despite losing to the Thunderbirds in the conference final. But they're no slouch. They gave the Thunderbirds 2 of their 3 losses in their entire playoff run, gave them the best fight out of any team. So we know those 2 teams, and then we're waiting on the Q and the OHL playoffs to finish up. Peter, what are your thoughts on these playoffs? Do you have any takes on players who've done well, or which team you think might win? Something like that.
Entertaining. I mean, I obviously have been keeping more of an eye on the London Peterborough game because that has been getting very, very chippy in every single game, especially right now. And now they're out Owen Beck, who got suspended for 2 games for a slew foot. So there goes one of their top acquisitions and key players for them. And now after that win, it seems like the momentum could be on the night side. And I'm going to highlight him again. I'm going to highlight Denver Barkey because he is just taken over this team right now in terms of like generating chances, being an offensive producer, and even Easton Cowan too. Both of them have been at the forefront for this team, but Barkey himself, being ranked 79th overall among North American skaters, he's basically taking that to heart, and he's saying, I'll take your 79 and I'll raise you to possibly a 2nd round selection. I'm not going to say he's going to be an early 2nd, but he could be a late 2nd, mid 2nd, early 3rd. He's going to be in that range, definitely. And yes, the size factor is against him, but man, is he driving hard to the net? Is he being creative? And he's all over in the offensive zone right now. The QMJHL, it's a fun, all-out offensive duel between these 2 teams, between Quebec and Halifax right now. Halifax, that's one where I'm really going to keep an eye on because just like the London Peterborough series, that one's very entertaining for, the offensive reasons as opposed to like, more off ice or on ice antics as well in the OHL one. But yeah, both series are going to be keeping an eye on. I'm going to be flipping back and forth between the 2 games. So yeah, looking forward to it.
Yeah, you got a busy night ahead of you, I guess.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, there's been tons of great performances in all of these playoff tournaments so far. Like Alexander Doucette, who was signed mid-year by the Red Wings, 29 points in 20 games. Zachary Bolduc, who like lit up the queue as soon as he was dropped off Team Canada for the U20 World Juniors. He's been lighting it up ever since. He has 17 points in 17 games. In that tournament, in the Q playoffs. As you mentioned, Denver Barkey has been just unreal. And then in the WHL playoffs, Dylan Guenther, 28 points in 19 games is absurd. I mean, he was in the NHL to start the year, so it's not surprising, but it's very impressive. And someone we've talked about plenty on this show, even though he lost in the WHL final, but Zach Benson on Winnipeg, 17 points in 15 games at the end of the playoffs. Not bad. It's been a ton of fun. I'm really glad that Kamloops added Zellweger and is kind of loading up this year. They couldn't get Bedard like some people were hoping they would do, but just loading up because they knew they were hosting and they wanted to give it their best shot, whether they earned the spot through winning the playoffs or not. But I'm glad they're there. It's going to be fun because Seattle needs someone to give them a challenge, and they might be the best chance we got of someone stopping Seattle. Matt, what are your thoughts on CHL playoffs as they come to an end here?
Yeah, and echoing, like the Thunderbirds have just been dominant. I mean, you'd expect it that they would be because of what the type of players they got. Guenther and Lambert have been massive additions to that team, and they've both been amazing. So I mean, yeah, they've been fun to watch. The Blazers, even though they got kicked out, have been fun to watch as well, with Stankoven dominating the playoffs there too. He's been really good, and I'm watching the Peterborough Petes London Knights because the only Canucks prospect that are still playing playoff hockey, Connor Lockhart for the Peterborough Petes, and he's been good in the playoffs. He hasn't been a dominating force, but he's got some points. So going up against, they were going up against, it would have been, I would have had a Canucks prospect in this series anyway, because the Peterborough Petes took out, who was it?
North Bay, was it?
North Bay, yeah.
North Bay,
North
Italian.
Bay. Josh Bloom was on that team. Canucks acquired him from the Buffalo Sabres a couple months ago. And so it would have been a Canucks prospect either way. But Lockhart's the one. So I'm hoping the Petes win, and then I'll have a Canucks prospect in the Memorial Cup. So
Nice.
that'd be the team I'll be rooting for. These playoffs have been really, really exciting. And again, shout out to William Whitelaw for winning being on the team, winning the Clark Cup as well. So
Nice.
been fun to watch.
Yeah. Completely random question before I move on. Do either of you know if Connor Lockhart is playing center or right D at this point? Because he's gone back and forth this year, which is wild. Do you guys know where he's playing right now? Because I don't, and it's very intriguing to me.
Don't know.
He's always listed as a center, I believe, but he played a lot of right D this year, which is not common.
No, it's not.
It is junior.
It
though, so
really
not fair.
isn't, unless maybe they're trying to do that experiment like the Leafs did with Mitch Marner and Alex Kerfoot on the back end. But he
I'll have
is
to look
listed as
into
a
that.
center. So
I'll have to look into that.
I'll have
That's
to check
a good,
the lineups through some of these games.
That's a good thing to put in my prospect corner.
It's really
prospect
really
corner,
funny.
prospect report.
Oh yeah.
We're
Yeah,
on
check it out. He played both positions this year, which is really funny. All right, so we're gonna move on to prospects of the week, where we like to wrap up the show talking about some prospects that we're excited about. Lots of guys to go through. I'll go quickly for mine first. Logan Stankoven. I mean, we've just gushed about him for years, and we talk about him as a prospect of the week every, 3 weeks. It feels like. But he had 97 points in 48 games this year. Missed a good chunk of games, but was just dominant offensively and really defensively too. He's one of the better two-way guys in the league, even though he's smaller. It's junior, so that works out pretty well. But he had 30 points in 14 playoff games with the Blazers. So he's at the top of his game right now. Get a couple weeks of rest and then jump back into the Memorial Cup. It'd be pretty awesome to see him win for Kamloops there. He's the captain of the team. He's from Kamloops. He grew up there. So it'd be pretty special for him to win that. It's going to be the last you see of him in junior hockey. So enjoy it while it lasts. Big Stankoven fans here. And I'd love to see him tearing it up in Dallas next year with Wyatt Johnston and all those young kids out in Dallas. Matt, I'll come to you next here. Who's your prospect of the week?
Well, I mentioned him briefly, the Seattle Thunderbirds, Brad Lambert, and he's been really good. Had 26 points, has 26 points in 17 games. A bit of a lightning rod for criticism for Jets fans and writers, and that he wasn't that good. It was good for the Manitoba Moose for a bit, and then he kind of dropped off and sent him obviously to the Seattle Thunderbirds, and he's dominating, which I think is best for his development, is playing in junior instead of having. I mean, he played so much in different leagues and different levels, and we all know what happened in Finland there, what he had to deal with, and then he goes to the NHL. I think he played. I can't remember if he played in the NHL games. I don't think he did, but he did play in the preseason. Looked pretty good in the preseason, and then. So the Moose had the 2 goals in 14 games. And, like I say, the Thunderbirds, 17 goals in 26 games, 38 points, and then the 26 points in the playoffs. So it looks like he's got some confidence, and that's good for Jets fans, for the Jets organization, because I think he still has that upside as being that top 6 forward. So I'm hoping that Lambert can kind of use this as a springboard next season. Who knows where he'll play? I mean, he may play in junior again. He can, but he may be in the AHL. So we'll see. But I think he's been really good through these playoffs, even though he's on a stacked team, but he's been one of their leaders. So he's my prospect of the week.
Yeah, absolutely. Lambert's been a great story, especially the second half of this year. Just real big confidence boost for him, I'm sure. Just dominating the WHL, which is what everyone kind of hoped to see from him. So hopefully he's built up the confidence enough that he can keep taking steps forward. Peter, you're up last here. Who's your prospect of the week this week?
I mean, just like we've gushed about Logan Stankoven, this is a prospect that I've gushed about so many times, and that's Leo Carlsson. Probably not the last time you're going to hear his name before the draft. Yeah, I mean, obviously his season has been very eventful, 25 points in 44 games as, a teenager in the SHL, goes to the U20 World Junior Championship, looks great there, doesn't play in the U18s because he's suiting up at the World Hockey Championship, youngest player to do so, and even youngest player for Sweden to suit up and score a goal at that tournament. And, obviously Sweden is very deep with their team at the World Hockey Championship, but Carlsson doesn't look out of place. He's making the most of his opportunity, getting those minutes, getting to the front of the net, being very deceptive like we know that he can be. There's a reason why he's a potential top 3 pick, and he's still showcasing it right now. Points may not be as high as maybe other players that have draft eligible players that played in the past. Like we seen Austin Matthews play there, Patrick Laine. They dominated the tournament, but Leo Carlsson, he may not dominate the stat sheet, but he's going to be dominating his overall play, and that is going to be something that should be kept note of. And if you're still sleeping on him, don't, because I know Cam Robinson from Elite Prospects tweeted something out. Don't sleep on him. Do not sleep on Leo Carlsson. He is very, very good.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I think it's also really encouraging to see him playing so well at center, because he's listed as a center by a lot of people, but this entire season in the SHL, he played on the wing. It's pretty common for young players in Sweden to come up through the pro ranks on the wing and then move to center. But, everyone lists him at center and he doesn't play center at all for an entire year. It's like it's worth asking if he's going to be an NHL centerman. But then at this tournament, centering Lucas Raymond, Alex Nylander at a time, or Lucas Raymond and Jonathan Berggren, which is just an absolute dream for Red Wings fans, which turns into a nightmare when you remember that they have no lottery luck and have no chance of getting Carlsson. He's looked great down the middle, like no problems, no questions on my end. So I think that's really encouraging too. All right. Thank you for those guys. That does it for us this week. Thank you all for tuning in to another episode of Prospect Corner. Make sure you subscribe to the Hockey Writers YouTube channel to make sure you don't miss any of the rest of our episodes. And also make sure you check out our site, thehockeywriters.com, for tons of draft coverage over the next few weeks. Make sure you check out the site. There's a lot there. Do it. Thank you, Peter. Thank you, Matt. And thank you all for watching this week's episode of Prospect Corner. We'll see you next time.